Hey everyone. Um, Sorry I'm not showing my face, but I look like crap. But I'm excited to read for y'all today. So I'm going to share my screen and you get to look at the front cover of my book. Unless I can find some kind of Kindle app on my computer. Um, Today we are reading about the first 4 days of the festival. You'll get to see some of Caterina's interactions with other people, especially her baby sister. You'll find out a little something that will pertain to other books. So that's cool. Yeah. Alright, so I'm not finding what I need. Well, you can look at this if you want, if you're not reading along with me. I'm just kidding. But I do have the 3 books already out. Ooh. That was so cool. I don't know, this is weird. Cool. Alright, so there you go. And now to start the reading. The first day of festivals. Dmitri smiled. I donated some of my coffee and creamer to the inn so that this village could be the first to enjoy coffee in your country. A barmaid overheard him as she was helping someone else and went to spread the news to the other staff. They were the first village in the country to try coffee. That was something to be proud of. That's sweet of you, Caterina said, smiling. Caterina's family came down to eat with them, with Derek and Blake eating smaller portions, and Adeline getting a bottle. Good morning, Frederick greeted everyone as he and Natalia were the last ones to arrive. Good morning, everyone replied. Dmitri made a suggestion. After we finish eating, why don't we go explore the festival and digest this food while we walk around? Sounds good, Caterina replied happily. I can't wait to see what this daytime festival looks like. They finished eating and walked outside. There were people walking around and finishing the setup of the festival. They noticed that as more and more people showed up, the festival people started their shows. A man juggled knives, wowing the audience with his skills. A little further away there was a water trough filled with apples and water, where people were already dunking their heads under the water to bring an apple up with their teeth. The point of the game was to collect as many apples as you can without holding onto the trough with your hands. Thomas and his two younger brothers ran around laughing. There was so much to see and do. They ran over to the guy that was juggling knives and stared in awe as the man winked at them and kept juggling. They couldn't believe that he was juggling something so dangerous. Caterina rushed forward to reach her younger brothers. She couldn't let them be lost in the crowd. The man juggling gave her a wink as well when their eyes met, and she blushed, looking back towards the rest of her family. Her eyes met Dimitri's, and he walked over to place his hands on her shoulder. The juggler shrugged as he continued to wow the crowd. He was getting paid well by the village to entertain the villagers, so he was happy. Dmitri whispered in Caterina's ear, I don't like anyone else flirting with you. Caterina shivered. Jealous? Her voice trembled slightly. Yes, he replied, kissing the curve of her ear. He smirked at the second shiver. We belong to each other, and I will prove it. She turned to look up at him, and Dmitri leaned down to kiss her lips. Caterina's lips parted in a small gasp, and she felt his tongue slide into her mouth. His tongue mapped out the inside of her mouth and slid along her own tongue in an invitation to participate. Caterina closed her eyes as her tongue flicked up to join his in a lazy exploration of their newfound love. Giggling and gagging from behind Caterina broke the two lovebirds apart. Dmitri chuckled as he pulled away. He looked down into Caterina's dazed eyes and smirked proudly. He looked past her to her brothers. Thomas was fake gagging, and Derek and Blake were giggling, staring up at them. Dmitri chuckled again, saying, Now, boys, don't tease your sister too much. Yes, big brother, the two youngest boys said in chorus. Dmitri stared in shock while Thomas smirked. Brother? Dmitri asked. Thomas replied, Well, you are marrying our sister. He grinned. You're about to gain 5 brothers and 2 new sisters. He was of course referring to their sister-in-law Natalia. Okay. Dmitri was still a little shocked. Caterina had taken that time to calm down from the excitement. Her cheeks lost the flush as she looked at her brothers. Let's get back to the others. The juggler was getting a drink during a break. The three boys grumbled, but they followed Caterina and Dmitri away. Frederick glanced at the small group warily. What happened? Blake giggled. Big brother Dmitri was kissing Caterina. He was excited to tell the news. Caterina groaned, letting her head hit Dmitri's back, and heard the laughs from the others. Frederick laughed. He called to his sister. Come on, Caterina, stop hiding behind your fiancé. He saw her peer out from around Dmitri, cheeks pink, and he grinned. Come on. Caterina stood beside Dmitri and looked at her oldest brother. She waited for him to tease her some more, but what he did instead surprised her. Okay, everyone, let's go to the next activity, he said. As a group, he added, looking pointedly at the three youngest brothers. He wasn't going to tease her? Caterina was confused. But then she saw her sister-in-law remove her hand from his side, and she understood. Natalia was keeping her husband from teasing his little sister. Caterina was grateful for Natalia. They kept going to each activity that morning until stomachs started growling. Lonnie spoke up. We should grab some lunch. She led the way back to the inn and they all followed her. Lonnie led the way to the stairs. Go get washed up and then come down to eat. She watched as even her eldest son and wife obeyed her. Smiling, she went to wash up as well. Dmitri came back down 5 minutes later and sat at a table as more of the group finished washing up. He motioned for Caterina to sit next to him, and they all began eating. He was happy to be a part of this journey, and he wouldn't change it for the world. Natalia watched her family. She was happy that they were all having a good time, while also showing the country that they were good people still. She knew that after they ate, they would have to rest for a while before watching the fireworks that night. Lonnie watched as everyone ate and talked. She was happy to have most of her family around her, but she missed her husband. Julius would have been ecstatic about becoming a grandfather. He would have been overprotective over Natalia during her pregnancy. He also would have fawned over his second daughter. She would have had him wrapped around her little finger. The group rested for a bit before heading outside to see the fireworks that the village had orchestrated for the royal family. The fireworks shot up high into the air before popping into loud balls of light and sound. Lonnie kept rocking Adeline from where she was in the room, staying inside away from the noise. The second day of festivals. Caterina woke up with a long stretch the next morning. She was still a little tired from the excitement of yesterday. She took a bath and got dressed for the day. She had to get her mother to help her braid her hair because they had decided not to bring any maids, just the nursemaid to help with Adeline when Lonnie was tired. Thank you, Mother. You're welcome, dear. Lonnie smiled as she patted the last braid into place. She moved away, letting her daughter stand up. Let's go down to breakfast. Caterina turned to the door. She and her mother walked through the door and down the stairs to the dining room of the inn. Caterina saw the rest of their group sitting down and eating already. Sorry, we're late. Don't worry about it, Dmitri said. He kissed her cheek as she sat down next to him. How did you sleep? I slept well, Caterina smiled. She asked, What about you, Dmitri? I slept well, thank you. He smiled back at his fiancée. He only focused on her, as he had already finished his breakfast. He didn't even let any teasing from his future brothers-in-law get to him. Caterina blushed and started eating. She couldn't wait to get away from her brothers and their teasing. She ate a filling meal, but she wanted to get out of there. Dmitri, do you want to go out? Dmitri grinned. Yes, let's go walk around the village and see what is happening today. He stood up and held out his hand for her. She took his hand and stood. He led her outside. He wanted to experience everything that the festivals offered with her. He couldn't wait until he could spend all his time with Caterina. She was already his whole world. Caterina looked around as they walked around outside. She felt Dmitri tug her to a stall. Looking at him, she followed Dmitri to a stall that held beautiful jewelry. Dmitri looked at a beautiful necklace that had a white rose pendant with a diamond in the center of the rose. I'll take this one for my lovely fiancé. The stall owner smiled. It's actually part of a set, Your Highness. I just kept the necklace out to draw interest. I'll take the set then. Princess Caterina deserves the best. Dmitri smiled at the stall owner. Caterina tried to protest. She didn't need to have new jewelry. Then she saw what the jewelry was, and she couldn't believe that he wanted to give her something that would always remind them of their first date. She put her head on his shoulder in fondness and embarrassment. Man, did she love this fool. The stall owner smiled again at the young couple. She pulled out the rest of the set, earrings, a ring, and a bracelet, with a spot for the necklace to hang on the display. Would you like to wear them out, Princess? Dmitri watched as Caterina nodded and he put the necklace on her. Then he reached over to grab the ring and bracelet. The ring he put on her right ring finger. The bracelet went on her left wrist. Then he reached for the earrings. You might want to put these on yourself. Thank you, Caterina replied. She put the earrings in, watching him as he stared at her. His gaze made her feel hot. Dmitri looked at the stall owner. How much for the set? When he was told the price, he handed over more than what she asked for. Sir, this is too much. She was surprised that he would pay more than what the jewelry was worth. This is me showing my appreciation for the wonderful wares you have. Dmitri smiled with a mischievous smile. Let's just say that he gave her a mischievous smile. Then he turned back to Caterina and asked, Do you want to see what the fortune teller has to say about our future? Sure, why not? Caterina laughed slightly. She was still a little in shock at his surprise and his generosity. She followed him over to a tent with a sign that had an eye on it. He let her go in first and followed behind. Caterina glanced around before her eyes landed on the woman in the middle of the room. You have the gift, young one, though you believe it not, the woman said before Dmitri stepped inside. My eyes met hers, and she nodded. Her Caterina's eyes met hers and nodded. When Dmitri stopped at her side, the woman spoke. "Come, young couple, and let's see what the future holds, shall we?" "Sure," Dmitri replied as they walked towards the woman. They sat on the chairs in front of her. He looked at her interestedly, waiting to see what she would do. The woman smiled as she looked at them. Then her eyes lowered to the crystal ball on the table before her. She saw a white lily. "You lost someone very recently." The lily disappeared to become a tiger. "You have a dangerous enemy. He will go on to show how dangerous he is soon." "How soon?" Caterina asked. "I can't tell. But you will find out soon." The woman seemed confused about the cryptic message that she saw, but continued on. "You will find a long love with each other, but the road is long. You might find the road difficult to travel." Dmitri looked at Caterina in worry. He was worried about her enemies. Which one will hurt her? He would have to check on Eduardo when they got back from the royal procession. His lips turned down into a frown as he thought about the other prince. Caterina looked between the fortune teller and Dmitri. She was also worried. Caterina looked back at the fortune teller. "Thank you for the reading. It was very illuminating." She nodded her head at the fortune teller, who returned the gesture, and turned back to Dmitri. "Let's go. We have a lot to think about." Dmitri nodded. "Okay, let's go speak with the others. Maybe they have ideas on what to do." He led the way out of the tent, and they walked hand in hand all the way back to the inn. On the way there, a few children were running around laughing. It was nice to see that someone was having fun at least. Dmitri wondered what would happen next, and if they would really have their happily ever after. I think I put my cat to sleep. The third day of festivals. After a full afternoon and well into the night of discussing ideas, the Petersons and Dmitri came up with nothing but a wait-and-see policy. They had some ideas, but none of their ideas were able to be started just yet. At least, not while they were on the procession. Frederick was frustrated that they couldn't immediately find out who was the one who would threaten his sister again. He wanted to rush out to deal with Eduardo and his grandfather, but he knew that to be a good king, he wouldn't be able to be reckless. He would have to reflect on this and come to a logical solution so that his family would be safe. Everyone slept in that morning, exhausted from the late night of planning and failing to come up with a reasonable plan. Caterina sat at the table sipping on her coffee. She was glad that Dmitri had introduced her to the drink. She saw her mother come down with the baby, and she held out her arms to take Adeline. When Lonnie handed over Adeline with a smile, Caterina said, "If you want the break, I will happily take care of her while you enjoy the festival today." Lonnie looked at her daughter in surprise. "Okay, thanks." She wasn't going to stop her daughter from helping out with the baby. Besides, she needed the break. It would be good to get out and see the sights without holding a baby, waiting for the loud noises to upset her. Lonnie could actually relax and enjoy herself. Not that she hated taking care of her baby girl, but she would appreciate this opportunity. Caterina smiled at her mother and then down at her little sister. Little sister. Oh, today she would get to take care of her sister, her only surviving sister. She would do better this time around. She swore so to herself and to Adeline. Caterina thought of Rose, the sister that died before birth, and how she herself had failed. Adeline's dark brown hair was soft and fluffy, flipping out in little wisps that flowed around her tiny ears. Her bright baby blue eyes shined up at Caterina as a small smile formed on her little lips. "Caterina," said Lonnie. When the 16-year-old looked up, she continued, "What were you thinking about?" Caterina looked back down at Adeline, seeing a much smaller baby in her arms quietly sleeping. Looking back at Lonnie, Caterina said, "I think I was seeing what Adeline would look like in a few months." It was so strange, but it felt so real. Caterina was in shock. "What do you make of that, Mother?" Lonnie shook her head. "I don't know, dear. No one in the family, that I know of, has ever had visions. Maybe you were the first." She was a little concerned, but she also thought that it was kind of cool. If this was real, then Caterina would be able to see a few things about the future, but maybe not all of the time. Caterina hummed and got up. "I'll grab her things and take care of her in my room. You enjoy the festival." Caterina walked up the stairs with Adeline to her mother's room. She had to get the little cot and baby bag. The nursery maid was walking into the room as Caterina put the bag on her shoulder. "Oh, there you are," Caterina said. "Could you help me move the cot to my room? You get the day off. Go enjoy the festivals today. I'll be taking care of Adeline today." She smiled at the maid. "Yes, Your Highness." The maid helped move the cot and curtsied. Caterina thanked the maid and dismissed her. Then she put the bag on her bed and looked down at her baby sister that was just starting to wake up. "Hello, Adeline. Did you sleep well, love?" She saw those baby blues open, and then the baby started whining. "Oh, are you hungry, baby?" Caterina asked softly. "Sweetie, I'll get the bottle ready now." Caterina put Adeline on the bed and put a pillow on each side of the baby. She grabbed the sterilized bottle from the bag, the formula, and some water from the pitcher on her end table. Then she fixed the bottle and had someone heat it for her. Testing the temperature of the milk, she let it cool for a while and tried it again. By now Adeline was crying. Caterina walked over to the bed and spoke gently to the baby as she lifted her up. "Here you go, Adeline." She placed the heat of the bottle to Adeline's cheek, watching as Adeline brooded for it. Adeline drank from the bottle in strong little gulps, and Caterina watched with a smile on her face. What a cute picture her baby sister made. Caterina hummed as she rocked Adeline. Adeline finished the bottle, and then Caterina put a blanket over her shoulder and burped her. A cute little burp came out of the baby before Adeline was pulled down to lay curled into Caterina's arms. Caterina just held her sister, rocking and enjoying the time she had with her sister. Of course, she wondered what the others were doing, but she figured that they would tell her when they got back. Dmitri followed the group as they walked through the village. Lonnie was with them today, but Caterina wasn't. Dmitri was unusually quiet, just watching the villagers at the stalls. He noticed that Caterina's family were giving him looks, but he could care less. His thoughts were on Caterina and what she might be doing. Frederick laughed slightly as he walked over to Dmitri. "Come on, lover boy. Enjoy the morning and then you can go back to her, okay?" He put his arm over Dmitri's shoulders. Dmitri sighed. "You're right. I haven't been letting myself enjoy this." He smiled slightly at his future brother-in-law. "What should we do first this time?" "Let's do the bobbing for apples thing." Thomas bounced up and down in excitement. He hopped around the group, making the others laugh. Later, when they were all tired out, the group walked back to the inn. Lonnie went upstairs to check on her daughters and quickly ran to get her drawing supplies. When she made it back to Caterina's room, the two figures were still asleep. Caterina was sleeping on her back and had an arm around the baby sleeping on her stomach. Lonnie hurriedly drew the scene and slipped downstairs to show the others. Dmitri stared at the drawing. He wished that he could see that picture in real life, many times in the future. He longed for days filled with children running around his feet and laughter along the halls. He smiled as he thought about the love he felt for the young woman in the drawing. The fourth day of festivals. On the fourth day of the festivals, there was a small circus. People were so excited to ride the horses or pet the baby animals. There was also face painting, good food, and cool drinks. Children were running around in excitement. There was so much for them to see. Natalia and Caterina were walking alone as the men decided to help someone build a stall that had gotten busted up during the night. Lonnie was watching the younger children at the petting zoo. The two women were enjoying the alone time, just chatting, when a child almost ran into Natalia. Caterina grabbed the child and pulled him away from Natalia's belly. "Please watch where you are going," she said. The child looked up at the princess in shock. Caterina continued, "You almost ran into a pregnant woman. What if she fell and lost the baby?" The young girl started crying. "I'm sorry." Caterina smiled, loosening her grip as she crouched down. "It's okay, young one. You didn't actually hit her, so you're good. Don't worry. Just watch where you're going, okay?" The girl nodded, wiping her eyes. "Okay." A woman came over. "What's going on over here?" She noticed that it was the queen and her sister-in-law. "I'm sorry if my daughter caused any trouble." "No trouble," Caterina replied. "I just didn't want her to run into the queen's belly, causing her to fall and lose the baby." "I understand," said the suddenly pale woman. She had a horrible vision of what might happen if the queen had lost the prince or princess. She shuddered internally and grabbed her daughter, saying, "Let's go, dear." Natalia waited for the two to leave before she turned and smacked Caterina on the back of the head. "You didn't need to scare them." "I was only speaking the truth," Caterina exclaimed petulantly. She pouted at her older sister-in-law. Then she realized that she would have to take accountability for her actions. She would have to make it up to the woman and her daughter. Caterina led Natalia over to George and went to go find the two that she had scared. On the way, she found a pretty princess doll made of porcelain and a simple but warm shawl. Walked around until she found the woman and girl. "Excuse me," Caterina said. The woman turned. Warily, she asked, "Yes, princess?" Caterina took a deep breath. "I'm sorry to have scared you both. I didn't mean to scare you with the worst-case scenario. I was just afraid of getting hurt and losing her baby. Please, take these as my sincere apology." The woman looked at Caterina's face, not the gifts, and ignored how her daughter squealed about the doll, and gently took it. The woman obviously saw the sincerity in Caterina's eyes, because she reached out and gently took the shawl. "Thank you, princess, for the apology and the gifts." Caterina nodded her head and turned to walk away. She did what she had meant to do. Now she had to catch up with the others. What was she going to tell them? That she had scared a mother and her daughter over the kid almost running into Natalia? Caterina stepped up to Natalia and George, who were both watching someone toss a ring at some empty bottles. Natalia didn't mention the earlier incident. She just motioned to the game before them and explained it to Caterina. "The boy is trying to get 3 rings around 3 bottles to get a prize." "Oh," Caterina replied, looking at the game as the boy managed to get the second ring around the second bottle. She leaned forward interestedly as he got ready to throw the 3rd ring, but he missed on the throw. "Nice try," she said, looking at the boy. He blinked in response. "Thank you, your highness." He bowed and left. Natalia smiled at Caterina. "Come on, I heard that some of the children are making flower crowns. I've never made one before." "Neither have I," Caterina replied, smiling back. She turned to George. "Will you please join us?" George nodded. He couldn't deny his younger sister. He smiled at how excited the 2 women were. Caterina and Natalia grabbed each other's hands and walked towards where Natalia had heard of the event. They walked to where children were gathering. They smiled at the gathered children, who were already picking flowers, and Caterina said, "Excuse us, could you teach us how to make flower crowns? We've never made any before." They were in a large meadow at the edge of the village that was filled with flowers. The children were shocked that the princess and the new queen had never made flower crowns. One girl walked over to them. "I'll teach you." She was excited to help. "Thank you," Natalia said. She and Caterina listened intently to the girl's instructions, and George grabbed the flowers that Natalia chose so she wouldn't have to bend down. Making little flower crowns with the village children was the highlight of the last 4 days for Caterina. She was enjoying the time and didn't realize that someone was watching from afar. She didn't see that person's brown eyes shine with love as they watched her put a flower crown on a little girl's head of curly red hair. The man smiled at his love. Her only thought was on the kids around her. He walked over and saw that George and Natalia just smiled at him. He snuck up on Caterina by putting his finger to his lips when the little girl looked up. When the girl looked back down at what Caterina was working on, the man knelt down and grabbed Caterina quickly. "Hi, my love," he said. Caterina jumped. She barely held on to the shriek as her heart leapt into her throat. Turning her head and seeing Dmitri, she smacked him on his arm hard. "Dmitri Romanova," she yelled. "How dare you sneak up on me like that?" She scowled at him and noticed his eyes widen. Dmitri felt his eyes start to widen as he stared at the girl in his arms. He couldn't believe that she had yelled at him. Then again, he could. He had really scared her. "I'm sorry, Caterina. I didn't mean to scare you so badly." Caterina looked at Natalia, checking to see if the new queen was okay and not about to have a miscarriage. Seeing that Natalia was okay, Caterina turned back to Dmitri. "You're forgiven. You wouldn't have been if she had lost the baby due to your inconsiderate action." Dmitri looked over at Natalia in shock, checking to make sure she was okay. He saw that she was still talking to the kids around her, so he looked back at Caterina, who was looking at him with a raised eyebrow. Dmitri said, "I'm sorry for scaring you. I'm glad I didn't scare her too." He sighed. "Would you like to go to the next event? I'll make it up to you." Caterina leaned forward to press a brief kiss to his lips. "All right, let's see what's next." He smiled at her as they stood up. Dmitri nodded to George as they passed him and walked towards the last stall in the festival. There were lots of people around the stall, cheering on the guy that was participating. Dmitri snuck himself and Caterina closer to the stall to watch. The guy that was participating stood there trying to catch as many goldfish as possible for his girl. There was a bit of a competition too. Catch 5 fish and you get a prize. Catch the most fish of the day and you get a romantic dinner for 2. The highest count of the day was 15. He was trying to catch his 6th fish, but as he swung the little net, the fish dipped deeper in the water, making him miss. The game was over. The young man and his girlfriend grabbed 5 fish that he had won for her. He was taking her somewhere else to enjoy the rest of their day. Dmitri congratulated the man on catching his 5 fish. He saw the young man's companion smile and reach for a prize, so Dmitri turned to Caterina. "Do you want me to try, love?" Caterina laughed. "Why not?" She watched him as he paid for a turn and started to scoop up the fish. Her mouth opened a little in shock as he quickly scooped up 5 fish. Then he kept going. With every little flick, he was scooping up a fish into the bowl that housed all of the fish Dmitri caught. Caterina barely heard the audience count as Dmitri scooped up fish. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Dmitri laughed when the 21st fish hopped out of his net. The game was over, and he had an excellent prize to give to Caterina to make up for his earlier mistake. He took the tickets, a small stuffed horse, and the 2 bowls of fish. They had to separate the fish into 2 bowls when the first bowl got too full. Caterina watched as Dmitri walked towards her. She reached out She reached out to take the horse and the tickets. She couldn't speak for some reason. He spoke up. "Caterina, will you eat dinner with me tonight? After we put these away, of course." Dmitri looked into her eyes. Caterina swallowed, blinking. Blinking, she cleared her throat. "Of course I will." She smiled at him and decided to give him a good kiss later when no one was around. They went back to the inn and put the bowls in Caterina's dresser. She put the stuffed horse on the bed and turned to Dmitri. "Thank you for winning the prize," she said, motioning to the horse. "And thank you for getting us dinner tonight." She walked over to him and noticed he was trying to get his throat working again. Well, that is the end of that reading session. I have 3 chapters to read on Friday. Hopefully my voice is better and hopefully I don't feel like crap. But 3 more chapters and we're done. I do have to say that the next chapter is a doozy. It's a scary in the moment kind of chapter. So you have that to look forward to. I hope you enjoyed today's reading. We ended up a little early. But yeah. As you know, I have books 1 and 2 in print where I am, but book 3 is also out in ebook form only right now until I get the last few changes made to put it for paperback as well. When it comes to reading that one, I'll probably just read on my phone. But yeah. Things are pretty interesting right now, writing-wise. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I shall see you Friday. Yeah, I should see you Friday. All right. Thank you for being here with me, and I shall see you next time. Bye-bye.